Hello, Utah fans and film fanatics. It's Elijah coming at you again from the last day of the Utah International Film Festival. With me, we have A. And A, you did all the things on your film. I'd love to please have you tell us a little bit about the story and production.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. So the film is called A Spell for Queer Home, and it's a 30-minute experimental documentary about what it means to be at home as a queer and trans person. So, kind of a unique production process. I'll just give you a tiny bit of backstory. So I grew up in Utah, and then I lived in New York for a long time, moved back to Utah in 2020. And it was in New York that I came out as a queer person and as a non-binary person. And so I really wondered what it was going to be like to come back to this place, and how I was going to find home and community here. And I was also having a lot of conversations with friends about what does home mean and how do we find it? How do we create it? How do we build it? So I went down to a ghost town in the desert, as one does. And I was there for 3 weeks alone in the middle of the summer. It was so hot, no AC. And I just was meditating on this question of what does it mean to be at home, and kind of working that out in my body. Like, I was in this really unique place, and so I had this free range to kind of perform the questions that I was sitting with. And then during that time, I also interviewed 18 queer and trans people across the country about their experiences of being at home, when they have known in their lives that they've been in a queer home, what they dream of in a future queer home. And then, so the film is sort of this performance footage of me in the desert, and then these interviews are all woven underneath that.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that is really, really unique. And I love also like the process of seeking the isolation to truly kind of find yourself. I can't imagine the juxtaposition between growing up here, going out to New York, and then coming back here. So, and I'm hoping you did find your community here as
Yeah,
well.
I did, and am still in the process, as I think we all are,
Mm.
and I think it's a hard thing and a very necessary thing to find community and build community when your rights are so viciously being attacked
Absolutely.
and so violently being attacked, especially in this state.
Mhm.
So I think we find each other, and we make home, and we find joy, and we grieve together, and we will always do that. And there's a real urgency to that right now as we're facing some some really scary things as a community.
Yeah, that's a great point to bring up, and one that's so important. So absolutely, and thank you for that. I've been very grateful in that I've been able to meet and call a lot of non-binary folks, transgender and queer folks, my friend as well.
Yeah.
So I am happy to see that there is that bravery and really just owning their identity to come out and really just say, hey, you know what, this is me.
Yeah.
You know,
And every time somebody else does that, it's easier for everybody else.
right. And I think that's so important for
Yeah.
your film. As a matter of fact, I understand we're kind of on the last leg of the full festival run.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of what you had experienced throughout the festival runs that you've seen, anything you'd love to highlight,
Yeah.
and then kind of what this experience has been like to have it here virtually is the like kind of last part.
Yeah, totally. So the film, it took 2 years to make. There was a year of editing, and then I finished it in early 2023. And yeah, it's played in a bunch of festivals, which has been so cool. Some Utah festivals. It played at the Utah Queer Film Festival, which was really fun. And then a couple festivals in LA and different places across the country, and even outside of the country. I think one unique part of this project is that I've done a lot of like community, like grassroots community screenings, because the film is, I call it a spell for queer home, and I really like. I'm gonna get a little woo on you right now, but like, I really believe in magic, in the sense that magic is just all these ingredients come together, and then it's whatever it's greater than the sum of its parts, and that's magic. Like, you stir it all together, and then something new emerges. And so I have thought of this film as that was both how the film was created, was I stirred all these things together, trying to cast this spell for queer and trans people to have home spaces, to know their enoughness, to feel a sense of belonging,
Yes.
to so that was one piece of the spell, but then the spell continues beyond the film, and that's what's been so cool about showing it in various spaces is um, I've in these community screenings, I've brought in community partners, activist organizations, poets, performers, musicians to perform before the screening, and then we have a discussion afterwards, and it just feels like it's a little bigger than the film. It's like we are building a queer home in that moment together.
Yes.
And I just feel like that has sort of a lasting impact. I've also done it because the film is shot in a ghost town. I think there is this element of rural spaces that is very important to talk about. And I think queer and trans people often gravitate towards cities because we're safer there in a lot of ways. I mean, it's easier for us to find each other. But as someone says in the film, like queer people should be safe everywhere.
Yes.
And like, I want that connection to land. Many of us want to be in nature. We want the quiet. We want all those same things, but that increased safety risk is the problem. So I've tried to show the film in smaller towns and more rural spaces to kind of open up that conversation as well. So that's been really cool. It's really great to be here. This is my first time at this festival, and it's really exciting. I've known about it and kind of like followed along from the sidelines, and so it's very cool to be here. And I love being in the virtual program. Honestly, I think it's great because I can share it with people so far and wide.
Yes.
You know, I mean, it's always amazing to be in a room with people watching your film, but I think the fact that I can share it with people who haven't seen it yet feels really exciting too.
Absolutely. I think especially getting to have the full festival run, I'm hoping you got some benefit from both live audience and then, getting that broader reach virtually.
Yeah.
It's a very important message. So that's great. And with regard to the actual shooting itself, it's great that you were able to find so many folks to interview and make subjects for the film. What would you say were some interesting stories, or, are there any folks you'd like to highlight?
I mean, they're all my friends, like I reached out to people who I thought were just kind of like magical people, who would like kind of like weave in this nonlinear way with me. And so it was like friends, mentors, exes, partners, like just, this whole queer spectrum of people. But yeah, like really incredible people. A local friend who's a yoga teacher and an herbalist, and a liberation teacher who is trans and has a trans kid. And so he was a big part of it. I have some friends in New York who are very like, do a lot of sex worker advocacy work. And so that, they shared some stories from that angle. I had a friend who was hiking the Pacific Crest Trail during the interview. They were like in the middle, they were like at the halfway point of the entire, of like a, 8-week trip or whatever. And so they found internet in this little town and called me, and then we did the interview. So the audio quality is like terrible, but I kept it in because it's so special.
Exactly. Like, I think it adds to the, right? Like,
yeah. And that was cool because they could talk about queer home for them was being alone in a tent at that time. I mean, I think the other interesting thing, like you were saying, just being kind of at the end of the festival run, is I have some distance from the making of the film now. And like a film is never a static thing.
Yes.
Everything keeps happening and everything keeps changing. And all the people in the film, like their lives have changed so much since we've talked. And I think that's really cool too. And such an important part of when we talk about queer home, we're not trying to reach some static place that's going to last forever.
I actually wanted to comment on that because you had used the term at that time.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's so true, because home, and especially I'm sure for the queer community, must always be evolving, changing, and growing.
I think it is for all of us, And then when we think about climate crisis, home is changing for all of us, whether we choose to acknowledge that or not. So
it's definitely a prescient topic as we are, and I hate that we have a wildfire season, right?
Yeah.
With everything going on in LA, you're absolutely,
I know.
It's crazy,
right? Like, how do we talk about home when homes are just gone?
Right.
Like, yeah.
So that's so great. Well, thank you so much, of course, for bringing all of that up. I'm fascinated to see this. Luckily, I have my virtual pass.
Nice.
And I know I'm definitely checking this out.
Cool.
What would you say, just in terms of the post-production? what were some things that you had encountered either in editing, or did you know, because it sounds like you
Yeah,
did a lot of this on your own, right?
I did do a lot. I'm like a pretty scrappy filmmaker. So, I mean, that's part of it is being scrappy, but I think the other part of it is that I'm shooting myself. Like my stories, most of my films are very personal. And so I kind of feel like I have to be alone with the camera. Like I have to kind of like open up this space where I can be really uninhibited to explore. And so it's easier if I'm shooting that than if somebody else is shooting that. And it's like fun. I think weird, trippy things happen when you're trying to like get yourself in focus and like you get these little accents that are kind of cool, you know? So I like that process. But editing myself was very hard. It's
Yeah.
very hard to watch like 20 hours of footage of yourself, you know? So I just found that in the edit, I had to sort of create some like energetic boundaries of like, okay, that's like performer me on the screen. And that is separate from like me sitting here in this room. And that felt really important to acknowledge that to myself so that I didn't get kind of caught up in this. I don't know, that you could really spiral, I think, in that space.
Oh, for sure. I could imagine like because you're absolutely right. There's elements of identity, right? And so it doesn't make anything less genuine.
Yeah.
It's just a different, part of or a sliver of your identity,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I love that. That's really cool to bring up.
Yeah.
And anything else just for the post production where there,
Well, one thing is I got to go back to the ghost town when I was finishing up the edit, and I did the final editing there for 2 weeks, like in the space, which was really great. Like I got to like feel it again and kind of tie up all the loose ends. And like music wasn't finalized, graphics weren't finalized, color correction, sound mix, all that stuff. But I got to like a solid rough cut, and showed it like at the space that I had stayed in, which was this like old Winnebago that with like
yes.
this um constructed sun deck, and like we just like hung up a sheet and projected the rough cut on the wall on the sheet, and then had like the person who owns that space invited like all these like wild desert people all from all over to come watch it. And it was like a really magical evening, but it was like really intense. It was like my first time showing it to other people. It's always weird when you've been like in it with a film, and then you like come out of and you're like, oh my God, like I have to like now I have to let somebody else see this, So that was like a really cool moment. But I think it was a turning point of being like, hey, now we're done. Now we're in this part where now we put it out into the world.
Yes. Yeah. And again, it sounds also like I just want to highlight just the strength of your vulnerability through every step of this, and also just the reach, and what a noble goal that is, right? So I really, of course, yeah. And we have already talked a little bit about the experience you've had throughout the many film festivals. And of course, we appreciate you're happy to be here with us.
Yeah.
Likewise, happy to have you here with us. Is there anything else that you want to share with regard either to some goals here at the Utah International Film Festival, or just overall that you'd like to share?
I'm really happy to be sharing this film with Utah audiences. I want to talk to people about it. I'm happy to be sharing it in Utah County specifically, because I think it's a community that needs a lot of queer love. And I mean, I just want to connect with more filmmakers here. I was like talking to some folks earlier. That was really great. I think I'm going to try to sneak in and pitch. So if they let me, I'm on the waiting list. So, yeah, and then this film, I wanted to have a life. Like I want it to live beyond this. So, my dream is that I like rent a bus and take it on tour across the country. So I'm just waiting for somebody to be like, I'll fund that. But yeah, and then I have a feature project, a feature documentary in development, early pre-production right now, that is sort of a building upon this film.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Do you have a title for that one yet?
It's currently called Untitled Queer Birth Project.
Awesome.
So yeah.
Awesome. Well, it's been so great to get to start my morning and talking today. I appreciate it. So for those, especially watching through the tubes of you, definitely take a look through the virtual pass for a spell for queer home.
Yeah.
See, I kept throwing A in there. So like, where's the A? But Again, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to get to speak with you today.
Yeah.
I hope you have an awesome rest of your film festival experience. And to everyone else, well, let me ask, anything else you want to say?
No, thanks so much for having me. It's
Of
been great.
course. Yeah. And so to everyone else, until the next one, stay tuned.